Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I'm an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. Make sure to check in the description notes below the video where you will find links to all of my online shenanigans, including how to get my patterns to knit up for yourself, how to join the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group, how to support me on Patreon, and where to get Watch Barbara Knit merch. Today I want to talk to you about an in-person teaching event that I will be attending next month in September. Now, I've talked about this a little bit before several months ago, and I will dig that video up and link it in the description notes below. And I talked about the event itself and the classes I was going to teach, and it is through, and I have all the information open on another window. So when I look to the side, I want to make sure that I give you the right information, because what my brain remembers and what is real, not always the same thing. It is the Yarnover event hosted by the Minnesota Knitters Guild. And this is the 36th annual time they have held this event. So it is really a long-standing and large knitting event. Knitting events like this are super fun to go to. If you have never gone to something like this, I mean, and you can get to Minnesota or in the Minnesota area, I really highly encourage it, because being in a big space, like this is like a convention space, with a large number of like-minded fiber enthusiasts is really just an honestly amazing thing. It is invigorating, and it really inspires your creativity, and like being able to talk with people who really understand exactly where you're coming from and aren't gonna like raise any eyebrows and things like that when you passionately want to discuss, you know, the benefits of cuff down versus toe up sock knitting for, you know, an hour and a half. There are people who are going to want to do that with you if that's your thing, or shawl shapes, or pieced garments versus garments that are knit all in the round. I'm just saying all of those things that go on in your brain that nobody else who is not a knitter, who is not a fiber enthusiast, is really going to understand why this is something that you need to talk about for this extended period of time. These people, your people, are at these kinds of events. So if you have time in mid-September, I almost said December, in mid-September, and are in the Minnesota area, or can get to the Minnesota area, because, you know, airplanes exist. I mean, I'm coming from Florida, so it's a ways. Think about maybe doing this as a treat to yourself, because it really is a wonderful experience. And so this event, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. The tentative schedule, and it's September 22nd, which is a Friday, Saturday, September 23rd, and then Sunday, September 24th. But it looks like the only thing on the 24th is the Minnesota Knitters Guild meeting. So if you're not a member of the Minnesota Knitters Guild, Friday and Saturday are really the days. And the only thing happening on Friday night is from 5:30 to 9 p.m. opening night social and sampler. So that is really cool. I'll be attending that. It's going to be a time when I'm not teaching that I'll be able to chat and talk with people, and really that is like the most fun part of it. And it is at the Crown Plaza. So let me see if I can find an address. So here it is, 3131 Campus Drive, Plymouth, Minnesota. If you're like me and not from Minnesota, Plymouth, Minnesota doesn't mean anything to you, but that is where it is. I know this is like the Twin Cities area, and I don't actually know what the Twin Cities are. I think it's Minneapolis, St. Paul are the Twin Cities, but don't quote me on that. I would have to look it up, but it's very cool. And so you have the just seeing other people, and then there will be classes on Saturday, but then there's also a marketplace. And what a marketplace is going to be, if you haven't been to one, is going to be a big old room full of vendors selling all kinds of fiber arts related. And it looks like, so that is open Saturday, September 23rd from 8 to 9 a.m. It is open only to class participants so they can get some shopping in before they start going to classes. And then from 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. it's open for all attendees. Open to public, it says. And the Yarnover Marketplace is free to attend. So it looks like it's just open to the public. And it says, join us for a yarn, fleece, project bag, stitch marker, and knitting tool shopping extravaganza featuring the following awesome vendors. And then there is a whole list of amazing vendors, and you'll be able to go to the website and check those out yourself. It looks like a lot of fun. I'm going to be probably walking as quickly as I physically can in that hour before classes start. But actually, I will probably not be able to attend the marketplace because I really need to get into the classroom and get in that space and really get into the headspace of teaching. So who knows if I'm going to be able to do that. Now, let me see if there's anything under the events tab. The social and sampler. There's a shawl contest. Wear your Yarnover shawl to our Friday night event and be photographed, or stop by on Saturday. And apparently there's online voting for that. There's Yarnover game night. Night of games and fun with fellow knitters. There's a pub quiz. So I don't know what that is. And then the Knitters Guild meeting. If you're not a member of the guild, you don't have to worry about that. And then, of course, there are the classes. On Saturday, the classes begin at 9 a.m. And so there's a morning session that's 9 to 12. And then there's an afternoon session from 2 to 5. So maybe after that, I could get into the marketplace. That would be fun. And there's a 2-hour lunch. There is one class that goes the entire day, and then otherwise there's morning classes and afternoon classes. So, I'm talking about this now because when I previously spoke about it, I believe it was back in March, registration was only open to Knitting Guild members. And after the Knitting Guild members had a specific amount of time to register, they opened it up to the general public. And there are two different prices, Guild member versus not Guild member, you know, standard kind of stuff. So right now, registration is open to anyone who wants to attend. All you have to do is go to the website. Again, I'll link it below, and look at the information, and you will just pay the non-member price. And it looks like the classes were, for one class, it was $90 for members and $100 for non-members for the half day, and then $180 for members and $200 for non-members for the full day. So 2 classes, or the full day class. Now, the afternoon class, and I just wanted to double check on this when I went before I started talking to y'all about it, my afternoon class is actually sold out, which was a surprise to me because I mean, I don't have the update on this information, but it says right here, so it is sold out. So that is really exciting. That means I'm going to have a full class, and that was the Mosaic and Lace Technique Toolbox class. But there are plenty of other really interesting afternoon classes. If you definitely wanted to go and take a morning class in an afternoon class, obviously you're going to take my morning class, right? But so there's a Mobius class, that learning how to do Mobius. I took a class on that at one of these type events, and really I had tried many times to figure it out myself, like using videos, and it never clicked, and taking a class on it, it really made me understand it. There's a class on seaming and finishing. There's a class on adding decorative elements to your projects using embroidery and crochet. That's embellish your knits. There's designing your own color work. There is dive into the special Swedish knitting technique of something that I cannot even remotely pronounce, also called twined knitting. Add color to your knitting, working only one color at a time, and a short row sampler, learning how to do 3 different types of short rows. So there's still other really cool classes that are in the afternoon. And finally, I want to talk about my morning class, which it does not say it's sold out, so it is still available, and that is tips and tricks for working with variegated yarn. And there's a little story that goes with this, because really the reason why I started designing in the first place was that I loved variegated yarn, but it doesn't look good in a lot of patterns. Like, you have this beautiful skein of variegated yarn that you are completely in love with, and then you try it in a pattern and it just looks horrible, and then you try it in another pattern and it looks horrible, and you're like, what? This yarn is beautiful, this pattern is beautiful, why can't they like each other? And this class helps you understand the why, that the yarn and the pattern are not getting along. And I have spent a lot of my design career trying to understand, and especially in the early years, trying to understand how variegated yarn interacts with knitting fabrics and patterns, so that I could design patterns that looked good in variegated yarn. And I do have a video on this, which I will link in the description notes below. What this class covers is I take a huge box. You would not believe the box that I have to fly to Minnesota with. I take this big box of variegated yarn, just yarn in skeins, and variegated samples, and I go through the yarn itself, and the class teaches you how to look at a skein of yarn and evaluate that skein of yarn and like plot it on a spectrum of noisiness to not noisiness, which you'll understand if you take the class, and figure out what kind of things that yarn will probably like. So a big part of the class is analyzing yarn. And once we have a better understanding of the yarn itself, then for a portion of the class, we talk about analyzing patterns and what in patterns does and does not lend itself to variegated usage of variegated yarns. And then we look at like how variegated yarn interacts with different fabric types, be it color work, cables, lace, things like that. So we cover this whole figuring out the yarn, figuring out the patterns, figuring out the fabric, and to an extent how things work with different like fabric, like project types, like sweaters versus shawls, etc., etc., etc. Once we've gone through all of that, that is like me talking and showing and looking at pretty things. Then the second half of the class is actually doing some knitting, where what we will do is work through a swatch. You have to bring variegated yarn and work through a swatch, and I will teach you tricks of how to tame variegated yarn if you want to like settle it down, or how to highlight the variegated yarn with different types of stitches that variegated yarn really tends to like. So the first half is talky and the second half is stitchy and then we just have time to work on the swatches. So it is really a fun class. It is not just lecture, because I know that some people get a little bored with lecture, so there is hands-on involved, and there's time to talk, and there's time for I love it, love it, love it when my students ask questions. And every single time I've taught this class, the class is a little bit different because all of the students bring their own questions. And a lot of times they're questions that I've never thought of, but we can work through those questions together and, you know, arrive at a conclusion. And I learn things from every class I teach. And sometimes they get incorporated back into the class because it's like, that was such a good question. It's something that really needs to be in the handout. So it is tips and tricks for working with variegated yarn at the Yarnover, Minnesota Knitting Guild on September 23rd. This starts at 9 a.m. And I am so excited and really nervous also. I'm always nervous when I go to these things, primarily not about the teaching, because I've taught this class quite a few times and I really enjoy it, and the students really seem to enjoy it. The thing that stresses me out is the actual traveling, because as I said, I take lots of stuff. Since I'm teaching the mosaic and lace class, I will be taking a huge box full of mosaic and lace samples, essentially my entire book. This thing here, all the samples from the book, and then other things I've done since then, and they will take up a huge amount of space. I will end up with 2 big suitcases for all of this stuff, and the entire time from the moment I give those suitcases to the agent to the moment I see them coming off of the baggage carousel, I am stressed out. It is just very high-key anxiety when those things are out of my possession, because it represents literally years of work for me, and frankly a substantial monetary investment, because it's a lot of yarn and it's a lot of samples. So once I'm at the event, all things is great. And actually there's also that little part between leaving the leaving the airport and having to figure out the transportation. That's also stressful. It's the traveling that stresses me out. But once I'm at the event and I'm around all the lovely knitters and vendors and students, everything is just wonderful. I mean, teaching the class makes me nervous, but I love being with the students. But it's the traveling. The traveling stresses me out because so many things are out of my control. You know what I mean? So that's just, letting you know that if you see me, I once, when I was traveling like this, I was on an airplane and the person behind me was actually going to the exact same event that I was going to, and they recognized me and they said hi to me, and I tried my best to be as nice as possible. But if you happen to run into me during the traveling portion of the program and I seem a little high key, it's because I'm just stressed out because I don't know where my suitcases are. Unless they're in my hands, I'm gonna be stressed out. So I would love it if any of y'all are able to attend this event and or attend one of my classes. If you do know me from here on Watch Barbara Knit, and that's why you went to this event, say hi. I mean, even if you're not in the class, please say hi. I would love to see any and all of you. As I said, it's a great place to meet like-minded people and talk about all of this super fun stuff. So description notes below. Go to the Minnesota Knitters Guild website so you can register and look at all of your options. So if you like this video, please click the thumbs up button. And if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. Thank you so much.